Everyone, I'm here with Kate Bergman. Hi, Kate.
Hello.
And some of you know Kate as my somatic experiencing and NARM colleague, who is also a part of my team, together with Destiny, Tanya, and Derek. Kate is also a former student who completed her Peace with Food group in now the distant 2020. And Kate is here to speak with me about her own journey, both her personal journey inside Peace with Food, but also what it's like to support people both in our school and in her private practice as a coach and also a therapist. And so, Kate, I'm very glad that you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I have lots of questions for you. And I was just telling Kate before we begin, if we run out of time, we'll just do a part two. But I just want to begin knowing what my curiosities are and what I want to talk to you about. I want to begin by just sharing with everybody that at some point today, we might touch subjects that are a part of significant personal medical decisions. And these medical decisions need to be made with a doctor in your team. And what we're sharing here doesn't in any way mean to be medical advice. This is not our scope. This is not what we're here for. But we're here to talk about the complex overlap of these complex medical decisions that sometimes people need to make for their own lives and their own personal destiny, and also the overlap with complex trauma and how really multifaceted and loaded this can be. And so I just want to make sure that we separate that at the very beginning, that our intention is really to bring our observation from the people that we work with and our own lives in navigating somatic therapy, somatic healing, and complex trauma when it comes to bodies and when it comes to complex medical decisions and choices that we make. Kate, is there something you want to add to this?
No, I think that is a beautiful disclaimer, and
Yeah.
I'm just excited to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, me too. Well, let's begin with you. You started your Peace with Food journey in 2020.
Yeah.
And I think you met me maybe through my book, maybe the year before. I'm not quite sure how you got to me, but I remember meeting you and being totally delighted that you wanted to be my student. Can you
Oh,
share a little bit about what was life like before Peace with Food? What were your experiences with food before that and maybe after?
sure. And when you say a little bit, there might be a lot there. We'll, I guess, see how this unfolds. But yeah, I was thinking about this the other day that I think I started my first diet around one in high school, and then 25 is when I officially started programs, or maybe even a little bit before that. And if I were to count up the amount of programs that I did, it was probably like, I don't know, 20 or so programs, and just everything from calorie restriction to counting things to, you know, to just so many years of that. And so that was sort of the first third of my life, was really trying to make myself smaller, trying doing it from a place of self-loathing, like I couldn't believe how big I had gotten, or just a lot of shame about my body, and a lot of just just a desire to be in a smaller body, always wanting to be in a smaller body. And um, I remember starting diets and being like, "Oh, I can't go out to dinner with you because I'm busy." But really, it wasn't that I was busy; it's that I couldn't eat anything on the menu. Or like at my nephew's wedding, I couldn't. I was in a vegan phase of sorts at that point, and I couldn't eat because of, you know, I did one program where you had to lose 7 pounds a week, and if you didn't, you would be put on probation. Like, and just so much restriction, and so much disconnection, and so much isolation with that. where it was sort of this like toxic mix of shame and isolation and restriction, really.
Mm.
So that was the first part. And that was what I came to realize. I don't think I'm answering your question is as I came into peace with food, like that was the sort of one extremity that I had lived in for a very long time, that my body had lived in. And then my body swung, and then I swung to the other end of the pendulum. Should I just go ahead and keep
Yeah,
talking? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I swung to the other end of the pendulum, which was basically like the anti diet world and the world of like the body is political and, you know, diets don't work. And I was like, amen, they don't work. And there was things in this about in this phase about like extinguishing food behaviors. So like I would buy 5 candy bars with the idea like I don't since I'm not restricting them, I'm not going to want them, so I can just keep them in my cabinet. But my metabolism and endocrine system or whatever did not get the memo. So like I was just like, you know, like sugar and it really went to the other end and gained a lot of weight and gained a lot of body mass. And but also like I really felt like there was a lot of people in this sort of area that I don't know how to say this, like who were anti-diet or anti-size discrimination, which I'm still anti-size discrimination, but like I was like, oh, these are my people over here. Um, and so to fast forward, what happened was as I started training in somatics, I started realizing like, okay, over here, I was not owning or like living in my body because the diet was this external, eat this, not that. And then over here, I think initially I thought like, yes, I am like arrived and I have total freedom. But like I started to realize like I did not feel good in my body. Like it did not feel good to like not be able to fit in the chair or like get in a kayak. And it just felt terrible. And within that sort of world, I would say like, wow, this feels really uncomfortable. And they'd say, well, that's just your at, you know, I guess fat phobia, you know, or like, you know, internalized and I started to come into this like place of like, no, actually, I don't feel good in my body. And you're kind of I kind of hearing these messages of how I should feel. And I really bought into those messages like big time. But I was also having the lived experience of not being able to breathe when I laid on my back and not being able to move or move. It was also during COVID that that started like that really escalated. So when I found you, I sort of think I found you through the somatic experiencing world. And then um, there was a therapist in Columbus who adores you, and she had mentioned your name. And then I looked at your website and I was like, I was like, no, I'll just wait on this. I'll just wait on this. And by the time I came to you, I was sort of in this like, I don't know what to do with myself anymore because I'm not going to go back into this 7 pound a week dieting world. I'm not going to go. I can't keep going this direction because I can't move. Like I don't have my body is not available to me. Like I and so when I found you, I was just like, I here I am. I don't know. I don't know. I was just
Yeah,
that was that time for me.
yeah. I remember meeting you, um, and you recently sent me a picture of like,
Mhm,
remember this is when we met 4 years ago. And
mhm,
I remember meeting you and you telling me I'm either going to go this very extreme, irreversible way to help myself,
mhm,
or I'm going to come this way and see if I can support my embodiment and my nervous system and see what comes out of that. And it was kind of like to me, I heard it like this is last resort.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice I set up because they were opposite ends of the continuum. But yeah, that was exactly how I felt. Like sort of, I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say that Um, I have a lovely coach that I adore, and she says, "Don't do work with me if you're desperate." And
Mm,
I think in the business world that probably makes sense, but in the
mhm.
body world, we often come to supporting ourselves exactly when we're desperate.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we kind of try it on our own, try it on our own, try it on our own, and then it's not until we kind of reach rock bottom that we're actually ready to go, okay, something's got to change here because my
Mhm,
body is my only home.
mhm,
And while I think all of us want a fair world where everybody's treated equally with dignity and with respect and has access to the same medical care and the same care and attention, no matter their size or the whatever group they belong to,
mhm,
um size or gender, or like all the ways that we can get different treatment because of that.
mhm,
Everybody deserves fair care and their dignity in the medical system or any other system, that there's a way in which there's also the personal experience of, even if I get equal care, that doesn't equal that I'm going to feel good or more
mhm.
capable in my body.
Yeah.
And that's something that I wrestle with all the time, between the collective and the societal, that the
Mhm,
systems that need our attention to change, and then the personal. And in nervous system work, we're always working with fractals, like what in the societal is mirrored in the personal, and what from the personal then creates these societal structures.
interesting. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Which is why we're also working with our own biases as practitioners, as coaches, as therapists.
Mhm,
We're always working with our own countertransference, because when that's not visible to us, we can end up enacting on others the very things that we're trying to um,
right.
protect ourselves and them from.
Mhm,
And so it's this very interesting space in which we met, and we met in the midst of like deep COVID,
mhm. Yeah,
um, where people were stuck in their homes and really limited in how much they could move or what they could eat or what was available, and all this food fear about like, is there going to be enough food?
mhm,
And I remember at the time we would just go out and do groceries once every 2 weeks. Um,
mhm.
and it was so crazy because that was not our rhythm of shopping.
Right, right.
And we ended up eating really weird stuff. Like tonight, we're having burgers with a side of edamame, right? Because that's what those are the things that
Right.
are left.
That's funny.
And
Yeah.
we just laughed that we ate some of the most weird food combinations during COVID, because we'd just buy
Mm,
whatever we thought we could use without much planning, and we would end up eating some weird things.
that's
But
funny.
if anybody had grown up in any scarcity or food insecurity, that time was also bringing a lot of tension
Mhm.
in the field. So I want to name that you came not just in a personal time of challenge, but also in a collective time of challenge around food.
Yeah, yeah.
It was,
It's funny. I didn't remember this, but, like, I remember during COVID just researching, like, how do you keep, like, a food cellar or, like, a supply of extra food that you could I forgot about that. I just
yeah.
totally forgot about that.
Mhm. And
Mm,
so we talked about how it was before.
yeah.
And what are you finding 4 years after? Other than you're
Before
finding yourself working in inside peace with food and helping others.
I mean, yeah. Oh, well, yeah, that's interesting to go to the after. I mean, I think that this idea of agency, as I understand it, of having choices, of having options, like when I told myself, like, you're done with diets, you're in this world and embrace the world of just what I thought of at the time as freedom, eh, that was sort of getting that's was like faux agency for me. That was almost like this, like, darn it, I'm gonna, I'm gonna do it. And during the program, I sort of got in the idea, or I learned about the idea of agency from a different perspective. It's funny, I actually keep it up on my wall, something from the program where, we talk about, and I wrote it down, like the adult and the child, and nuanced is the adult and black and white being the child. And like I look at this stuff all the time, and it's nice to have agency from like this internal place, or from this sort of, I don't, just this, just like this is my body and I live in it. And it's what I have. And I just everything changed. I don't know if I can pinpoint exact points, but I remember really coupling up self-loathing and food. Like, why can't I control myself? Why can't I stop myself? Why can't you lose weight? Why did you buy those cookies? If you eat one, you're going to eat the whole bag. Like just constant sort of like degrading myself. I remember also in the program talking about like the what is instead of the what is not, or like the what's right instead of the what's wrong attention. So somehow I think that tied into it too, like this just having a different relationship with how I feed my body, how I think, how I live in it, like how I experience it. And I don't mean to say that in a way where I haven't still had struggles, but they're just very, very different than the struggles I had
Hmm.
into the program. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I know you and I, backstage, in our team meetings and meeting one on one about our work, we talk about the nervous system space, somatic healing space, and then the weight loss space,
Mhm.
as spaces that get overcoupled.
Mhm.
Kind of
Yeah.
the wires kind of get crossed in those spaces. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering, what was it like for you to be in a program where, despite people sometimes having the desire
Mhm.
for intentional weight loss,
Mhm.
that we don't talk about weight loss and barely talk about food, actually, other than in our recent iteration of the curriculum since last year, really supporting people to understand the eating cycle
Mhm.
as it relates to attachment.
Mhm.
But really, we don't talk about food and eat this, not that, or
Yeah.
moral value of food or no moral value of food, or neutrality or weight. Like, we don't talk about any of these things. How was it for you to be in a program that doesn't talk about weight?
I mean, it was really nice. It was really, I remember there was one call where, we're doing a check-in, and I shared, I was really stressed out and I ate a candy bar. I ate a whole candy bar just without even thinking. I just ate this candy bar. And you were like, I'm glad you had the candy bar. And I was like, I don't think she heard me, because like I was waiting for like the slap on the wrist to be like, Kate, you have other ways you can take care of yourself. You don't need to eat your candy bar. And you were like, was it good? And I was like, well, yeah, it was. And you were like, good. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, I just remember being like, I, I don't know how to make meaning of that. Like, I just
Mm.
told on myself, expecting to have be met with some sort of like tisk tisk, which never happened, like has not ever happened in our relationship. So I don't project that on you anymore, I don't think. But it was just that's when I was like, okay, all right, so this is different. Like, this is a different space, because I'm not
Mm.
sure why she's okay with me eating this candy bar. Like, I'm not okay with eating this candy bar. And it reframed everything. You were like, well, it was sweet. And you were, like you were looking for something for comfort. And there are many ways to get comfort. And that at that moment was one of them that was accessible to you. And, it was just,
Mm.
I I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. So that was one of the first things, and that's been so helpful to me. Like,
Mm.
because any time you take something off the table as a choice, it creates it's funny, I'm thinking about my relationship with these candy bars, but it's like, "Okay, cool, she's okay with it." Like,
Mhm.
and eventually by the end of the program, I mean, now I feel like I'm in a place where, like, I'm okay with it, but, like, I needed somebody to give me explicit permission to live in my body in the way or into,
Right.
it was really interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, because I think in some way, if we look at the reach for the candy bar as an intelligent response in that moment,
Mhm,
if we try to extinguish it as like, oh no, this is a bad behavior, or shaming you, or bad
mhm,
food, like
mhm,
giving some moral quality to the food, and and in that way giving some judgment of yourself and finding ways to shame yourself. If we were not to do that and just looked at the intelligence of the system,
mhm.
then we can start to actually be able to trust that what's happening has a function, even if it looks dysfunctional to us because we don't understand it.
Yeah,
And oh my God, if my body's doing these things and it has a reason, if I'm doing
mhm.
these things and I have a reason, maybe I can trust myself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That this idea of trust, it doesn't come with just by itself. Like we have to arrive to trust as a natural byproduct of understanding the behaviors. And
yeah,
so I
right.
think that you were so open to being willing to look at the behaviors as an intelligent adaptation, as opposed to like, I have to extinguish this so I can have my life back,
Mhm,
or
mm.
my body's out to get me, or my
Yes,
trauma's out to get me, my nervous system's out to get me, my adaptations are out to get me. It's like, no, like there's,
yeah,
while we always have binds inside, we can look at what the need was under it. And if you needed sweetness and comfort, it's so much easier
mhm.
to fall asleep on something sweet,
Yeah, it is.
than on something bitter from our day. And it's just,
Yeah,
oh, okay. Given
yeah,
that as babies, we all fell asleep on something sweet, falling asleep on a soft
mhm,
breast that
mhm.
provides sweet food is like, yeah, sign me up.
Right. Yeah, right.
you know, like there's days that I'm like, of course I would want that. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah,
Right, back to our
yeah.
attachment. So
Mm,
it sounds like what changed first was the relationship with the behaviors and with your body.
mhm.
And then you could start changing your relationship with food. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, it's funny as we're talking, all these things are popping into my head. But like when I came into the program, I was pretty frozen, like very freezy in my system, and whatever you call it, functional freeze or freeze, like it was freeze, and and I was just thinking about that as you were talking, because another way that when when I was frozen, I couldn't feel things, but if I overeat, then I can feel the stretch of my stomach. Like
Yeah.
I could feel like, oh, I'm full, and
Mhm.
full would be quite full, and that I don't experience that anymore, but which is probably significant. But yeah, like I just so that's how I would kind of connect with myself is like either the bag of cookies, which would take me into I don't know high high like corn syrup energy. I don't know, but like it wasn't really sustained, or the stretch of the food in my stomach. And I think I don't even remember what you asked me right now, but I think over the course of the program, I came out of freeze, and that was really lovely. Like uh, to do it in a supported way, like in a sort of weekly, like diligent type of supported way. So I don't know if I answered what you said, but that's just
Mhm.
what kind of my head.
Mhm. Yeah. It sounds like it. And I'm curious to kind of look at after you completed.
Mhm.
Because we stayed in connection, continued working after you completed your program, and then you eventually 2.5 years ago, when I gathered my team,
Mhm.
you became a part of the team. So we've been in connection this whole time. I'm wondering, what has your food journey been like since, and what's the journey with your body been like since you're coming out of freeze, inhabiting yourself more fully?
Yeah.
But then that's not the end; that's the beginning.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
think I think Destiny has spoken about this when she did an interview with me a couple of years ago, and she used this really beautiful metaphor of, it's like I had been trying to run marathons,
Mhm.
and I would buy these new shoes for the marathon, speaking about diets,
Mhm.
but no one had taught me how to run.
Yeah.
And so the program taught me how to run, so now I could put on, if I wanted to put on some shoes or buy new shoes, I could. And I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, um, yeah, how has your food journey been since?
Yeah. Well, I remember right after the program, like you send out those emails and I read them. And there was one that you sent out about that it's I don't know how you said it exactly. So I might what I heard might not be exactly what you said, but my takeaway was, it's okay to like sort of have a system in which you want to organize your eating, like and which was so much more nuanced than eat keto. It was like, which is not what you were saying, but it was like, it's okay to eat keto if that's what you've determined is nourishing for you. And like it just was the nuance of like where your nervous system is, if you're eating from that higher state, if you're eating from some safety, some regulation, like, and so I was like, well, I do kind of want to eat um vegan, which I'm not anymore. But so I started out I started in this program, and it was funny because I went into the program and they wanted to weigh me each week. And I said, well, you can weigh me, but I'm really not interested in the number. And they were like, we don't like why? And I was like, well, that's not my metric. My metric is how I feel in my body. And I'm still too close to dieting culture that if you start telling me the number, I'm gonna just that's it's gonna objectify it. And I don't want to
Mm.
objectify it. And they were sort of like, well, that's sort of something we should work on. I'm like, no, we don't need to. Like, I mean, I just remember just being like, yeah, no, this is that maybe you need to, but I'm good, and just like, and I did that program. I did get the after number. So it was like 30, they would do all these measurements, which, there is actually some value in the data, but I just wasn't interested in it during that. And I remember thinking, that if I was going to sort of bring some containment to my diet and sort of eat in a specific way, I knew I was going to lose weight because, this whole about like nutrient density and, I was down for it in a way where it felt like an adventure less than it felt like an adventure more so. It didn't feel like a diet to me. Like it just felt like,
Mm.
okay, we're gonna see how the other half lives here and just kind of like lean into that. And so that was when I was sort of like, it's okay for me and my body to want to lose weight because actually, like I completed the piece with food and I was like, I, I don't actually, I have a different relationship with my body, but I don't feel, you know, necessarily good in terms of how the all this extra whatever that I'm carrying on my body. And so there was something really, really revolutionary about like it's okay to want to lose weight, which probably sounds ridiculous in this culture because it's all we see on magazines. But I had gotten to a point where I was like, oh, it's not okay to want to lose weight,
Right,
and
right,
it's sort of like it's okay. It's not so much it's okay to lose weight. It's okay to decide for yourself what you want, and
right.
it's
Correct.
and that was like,
Yeah.
oh, and that's what I wanted, and it felt liberating at that point then to say like, actually. I would like to be able to fit in the kayak at the in the mountains. I would like to be able to move differently. And I remember like ease. Ease was when we set my intentions for the program. I still have it on my wall, but one of them was I feel ease in my bones, like this desire to feel ease in my system. And it just sort of felt like the
Mm.
continuation of another sort of aspect of ease.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was the first thing. And then yeah, and then I wound up, should I just keep going? Like the
Yeah. Well, I
next
remember
step?
I'm trying to remember kind of how it was at that time, but I remember you sharing with me that you had decided to follow a plant-based diet, and I was like, "Oh."
Yeah.
It was like, "That's all you're gonna say?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, "Well, what else is there to say? It's your body. Do what you want to do, and then I'm here to support you on the way."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and whenever people decide anything about dieting, they always come to me with like, "What is she gonna say?" And
Yeah.
I always say, "It's your body. I'm here to support you along the way. I'm glad that you are choosing to move in a direction that feels good to you, and I'll be here with you."
Yeah. I was so like, this is where this gets kind of probably charged in some ways, but I was like, so I intentionally want to lose weight. And you're like, okay. And that intentional weight loss was such a trigger for me, like
Mhm.
of, studies say this or people say this. And it was like, but that's all out there. And like my own lived experience was different,
Yeah,
and mine.
yeah.
So
Well,
that was
and what's very interesting is when you work with yourself and you know whether your motivation is coming from a defense
mhm,
or from a complex,
yeah,
and you can explore it,
mhm,
it's got a very different feel, and it'll polarize us on the inside. It's like something that comes out of self-loathing
mhm,
or
yeah,
self-rejection is going to impact us very differently.
yeah,
And so I think, I've had my own fair share of starving myself to know how it feels to
mhm,
go, oh, I'm I reject my
mhm,
shape, or I reject who I am, because the body and who I am are
mhm,
overcoupled in that statement. And then I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight this. And I'm not gonna I'm this is not gonna be my life, like in this kind of militant, vicious way.
yeah,
Versus, oh, I have a histamine intolerance, or you know, there's too much histamine. I have a latex allergy, and how am I going to care for myself in that space?
mhm,
Um, which feels like, okay, that's just what I need to do, and just keep going with life. Just like I need to wash the windows. It's not charged in any way,
right,
and it
right,
and it doesn't come with all these immediate defenses on the inside. It doesn't come from a defense and doesn't cause defenses. And
yeah,
it's been a very interesting thing to experience inside myself in this deep way of studying the motivations,
mhm,
from different aspects, with my therapists, by myself, symbolically, archetypally, in every
mhm,
way. It's like, whoa, when we say diet, we're really talking about 100 different things.
mhm,
What are you talking about? Right?
right, right, right,
Right?
yeah,
Help me understand what you're doing with yourself when you come and say, I want to go plant-based. It's like, let's go and let's understand what that means to you as you go with it.
yeah, right, right, mm, it's so good. Oh, I just lost the strand. You just said something that I wanted to riff on, and I just lost it. It'll come right back, but, yeah. No, it was really it it was a really sort of like just big period of what does it mean to me,
Mhm.
um, and just sort of sorting through some of that.
Mhm.
We'll be in the middle of the next thing, and I'll remember what I was gonna say, but
You're welcome to remember. So
Ugh,
so you're on this journey, plant-based, then moved out of that into exploring a kind of a
yes.
more varied diet.
Yes, well, yeah, I just did a more varied diet, and then, so I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna share, like, with the GLPs kinda came on the scene, and I was like, "Absolutely not." And then I was like, "Well, maybe I'll just look at it," So it was just this, like, sort of like push-pull, like, you know, the sort of, "No, I'm not even contemplating this," but also I'm going to look it up on PubMed and everything I can find to see, like, kind of what is out there, and, um, I was sort of getting more and more curious about it and more like, well, it would feel good to lose some more weight. Like, I would like to lose some more weight. Also, like, my numbers, so to speak, or my lab work was trending in the right direction, but it has had a lot of room for improvement, and so I had a physical. And I said to the doctor, like, "So what do you think about Ozempic?" And it's really interesting. I'm really lucky I had this doctor because she was practically giddy. And I remember I was like, "Okay, calm down." Like, I was just sort of like, relax here. And she was like, "Here, here, here." Whereas I have other people I know who went into the doctor who said, diet and exercise and blah, blah, blah. But fortunately, you know, this doctor was very, like, into the research and into the medicine, and so I got it filled, and then it sat in my refrigerator for a month because I was like, "I don't know. I have to really decide if I want to do this, like, if I want to go down this path." Um, it was kind of a wasted month. I mean, maybe I needed it for my process, but, like, I
Yeah.
wish, I can give myself that I needed it for my process. Takes me a minute, but
Well,
once I s
can I pause you here for a moment? Because this
yes.
really goes into what goes into the before, like the
Yeah.
contemplation,
Mhm.
right? Usually it's much faster to go, "Oh, I'm gonna do a green juice starting on Monday, or
Right, right.
plant-based, or I'm gonna stop plant-based, I'm gonna add more protein," whatever it is that we manage in how we
Mhm.
choose to go about this. But it sounds like you gave yourself a long before, and I'm
Yeah.
imagining that during that time you weren't idle, that there was some internal processes that were going on. What was that like? What were
Hmm.
you wrestling with?
Well, one of the things I remember really a lot was I talked about it with my husband, and, I have some very close friends that I just was like, I was I was really afraid to speak it to anybody other than my husband. Not my close friends are wonderful, but I just was like, this feels so vulnerable and so charged and so, like, just very, just I felt very, like, tender,
Mm,
and I'm very clear my friends would be and have been as supportive as could be, but it was for me, it was like, I need to hold this, like, I can't share this because I remember it. So was it secrecy or was it, I don't know if it was not like this sort of thing that I felt very comfortable telling anybody. I don't think I know I didn't tell you. Like, I didn't tell anybody. My husband knew, and,
right. And
um
can I ask you like a good norm question?
sure.
Like, what was the worst that you were imagining was going to happen if you had shared? What was
Oh,
the
boy.
worst case scenario that you were going to?
That somebody My worst case scenario was that somebody would say, "Well, but why would you take that?" Well, actually, somebody did say this to me. They said, "You'll just do anything the doctor wants you to," and I don't this person's not in my life anymore. But and don't do that. There's gonna be studies in 10 years, and everybody's gonna be class action lawsuits, and just do it the old-fashioned way. And I was afraid, like, I would get that my but what was my fear if I did get what would it's just it was so, like, diminishing. It was just so, like
Right.
like it was so deflating or diminishing or just that there I was afraid that I would lose my resolve or my clarity and like this little speck of me that's like, okay, I want to do this. And
Well,
I was
it sounds like almost like you were expecting that people would shame you for your choice.
right, right, which one person did, but then she doesn't know that I actually did. But my I was afraid of that. And in the event that my friends actually watched this, it was not like it was not that they would have, because
Right.
they didn't, but it was me still projecting that into the world. And
Right. And if we can just pause here for a moment, I'm holding because I have these conversations with people not just about this kind of medicine, but about antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication or
yeah. Mhm.
and sometimes is medication to manage autoimmune illness. Like all these the people need to make these very complex choices with their doctors, and they navigate these inner binds. And
Mhm.
of course, I'm not a medical professional, and it's absolutely outside of my scope to
Mhm.
share an opinion, but I'm there accompanying them in the turmoil
Yeah.
of making these decisions, the before, the during, the after, when they're coming off medication. And so just thinking about, we expect to be shamed
Mhm.
because it exists in the world as a way of thinking about people. It's not a projection that comes out of nowhere. We've internalized it from how it is in the culture and also from how parts of us are with ourselves.
Yeah. All of it. I mean, yeah, when you live in a large body for years, whether you if you have a body, how about? But for me, like living in a large body for years, it was this defensive orientation and just this like, I mean, I mean, it's very real kind of what people encounter with healthcare or what I encountered with healthcare or with just various places. Like, yeah. And so on every level, it kind of was still there. And, since I've decided to take the meds, there are tons of people out there that shame people for the decision, but
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
just less interested in their
Yeah, well,
opinion.
and it's very interesting, right? It's like there's shaming going on about, well, you don't actually have a medical condition, so you are taking away from the people who really need it,
Yep.
to the people who really need it, or you should really change your lifestyle. um,
Hmm.
or to the people that are doing it without being in the category of medically needing it. Oh, you're just doing it for vanity reasons.
Right.
It's almost like no matter what you choose to do or not do, there will be a group of
Hmm.
people out there, whatever out there is, that is going to
Yeah.
find a way to shame you for your choices.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because I'm remembering um one of the things that I said to somebody at one point was like, you know what? It's my damn body. And they were like,
Right.
yeah, it's your damn body. And I was like,
Right.
and that has been my little mantra in the back of my head.
Hmm.
Um, and it is interesting because as a therapist, like, yeah, I don't do medications, but I can hold the frame like that this medication can help your neurochemistry, that this can support you in a way
Hmm.
like this medication level of medication support can be quite beneficial for some people. And I can hold that and hold no stigma for it. But yet when it came to the GLPs, I was like not able to hold that. Like I was not
Right.
able to hold that
Right.
at that point. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's very interesting, right? Because that's the internalized, and if we're going to speak about fat phobia or, just how the
Yeah.
messages that we've received, that, and I was talking to a colleague yesterday about this. I wonder in 20 years if people are going to wrestle with the choice to take GOP medication the same way that they wrestle with the choice to go on antidepressants
Yeah. Yeah.
versus feeling like, oh, I should just be able to do it with therapy, or I should just be able to do it with, oh, is there an herb for this? Can I buy something at Mother's Market or
Oh yeah.
Whole Foods that's going to do this, that's not made in a lab? And there's so much in just internalized self-rejection that's
Mhm.
coming both from the culture, from our families, and from our own, parts that do this to us,
Yeah.
that I feel like it's almost impossible to solve any complex body task. And
Mhm.
I came into working with eating disorders. Before that, I was working with chronic pain.
Mhm.
So it was like it's essentially the same inner struggle in
Yeah.
all of these fields that have complexity,
Mhm.
that we're going to meet these challenges of how long it takes. And it took you a month, but it could have taken you years
Right. Right. Right.
to organize yourself and move through the layers of the inner binds on the
Yeah.
way to trying something that you really don't know the outcome.
Right.
Because the reality is you don't know the outcome until um you kind of give your body for science in your
Right.
own science lab.
Yeah.
But we don't know the outcome of therapy when we begin working with a therapist. We don't know the outcome of um you know going on a hike. There's nothing we know. We can assume the outcomes based on what we've experienced before.
Mhm.
If I've been on 20 hikes, I'm more likely to know how I'm going to
Right.
feel, but no one's ever done this before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're all doing it for the first time, just like with antidepressants. In the beginning, no one had done it before the
Yeah.
first people went on these medications.
Right. That's so true. That's so
it
true.
it is just so complex, and I think, the more we can be nuanced in the conversation while also holding individual choice and agency,
Mhm.
um, the more we have a chance to really take our whole selves on the journey, ins- instead of, kind of like pulling ourselves and fragmenting ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, um, when people ask you for support, and you have in some ways become public about your support of GLP medications,
Mhm.
um, when people come to you to talk to you and seek your support
Mhm.
in the consideration or in the taking or the titrating off, whatever stage
Mhm.
they're in on their journey, what are they wrestling with? What are their struggles like?
Mm. Well, I mean, the shame, like even having the conversation with their doctor because they're afraid that the doctor will think that they're not like valid or warranted or that they will be judged or that they will be like admonished. So really, I mean, initially, I think it's shame and I think it's fear because they also, are all like afraid that they're going to be throwing up all the time and I always refer them to their doctor if they have side effects, like that's a doctor issue. But like there's just so much fear, of how is this going to impact me? And a lot of times like I'm not going to tell my husband, I'm not going to tell, even, I'm not going to tell anybody.
Mm.
One person night, um, hiding it in the refrigerator so nobody could see it, just because of the fear of judgment, like just so
And
that's yeah.
what's your sense of people are feeling judged for? They're feeling judged for not doing it some other way, or
Yes.
wanting an easy way out? Like, what are they imagining they're being judged for?
I mean, I think, you hear that kind of like calories in, calories out, or
Right.
that type of language. And it's like, again, like not seeing the nuance of it. So for some people, it's just black and white. Like you just don't eat as many calories and then you'll lose weight. And it's like, that's lovely for you. And also like, as soon as I set myself up into that, I'm starving. And then, I want to connect with food again and connect with like satiation. And so, I go for broke. So like as the like millions of people. So like it's it's getting that sort of like, just do it the old fashioned way. Just do it. I think
Right.
there's just such a fear of that,
Well,
you
and
know?
it sounds like also that there's a virtue or some
Yeah.
sort of a moral value assigned to being able to do it that way versus medication.
Yeah.
It's like the person that says, "Oh, I'm just going to keep going to therapy. I just need a better therapist,"
Mhm.
as opposed to actually getting support for themselves with medication if that's what's appropriate, and a psychiatrist can evaluate them and support them with that.
Right.
So, and we've talked about the shame identification and the pride identification, but this is almost like a projected, like, I need you, like this person, whoever that is, the judging, I need you to do it that way for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. That and
And that's a
yeah.
lot of pressure.
It is. And there's also like on the other end of it, there's this sort of like, this sort of like, I shouldn't want to lose weight. I mean, there's like this like sort of space of like, I shouldn't want to
Right.
lose weight. I should be
Right.
embracing my body and loving my body,
Right.
and I'm a bad feminist, or I'm a bad, like I should hold this for all of the large people out there. Like, that there's
Right.
some
Yeah.
sort of guilt that way too, is what I've seen. And
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and then that's another asking you to become an object
mhm,
for something.
yeah,
Like, again, like, where's Kate?
right, right,
It's like you are in this size body, so then you're in this kind of ability body, so then you need to do this.
yeah,
It really is, it's deeply objectifying. It's objectifying for, a good cause.
mhm,
Right?
mhm,
But again, extracts the person and the psyche and the individual destiny and unfolding of the blueprint of that person
yeah,
for their own life, for however their individual journey is going to unfold,
mhm,
and co-opts that
mhm,
for something, whatever that is.
mhm,
And that always scares the hell out of me, not being from this culture, and
mhm,
um, like really, like being from another culture, being from a culture that's very different, that
yeah,
when this is done to people's individual rights, that holds a certain meaning to me,
yeah,
you
mhm,
know
right, right,
and so I'll never be able to take out growing up in communism outside of myself, like it's just there. And
yes,
so when I see certain ways that people are being objectified for a cause, I get very concerned, and
mhm,
rightfully so.
yeah,
So back to this, you're supporting people who are navigating this, you're supporting yourself. Reminds me kind of like, what it was like to be a therapist during COVID.
mhm,
For you therapists, it was like, I
yeah,
gotta navigate this with my family and also hold your distress. Like, it's a lot.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's really a conversation that we'll probably continue to have, you and I, and maybe publicly here, like we have done for our students today. Um, what I hear from people that look for my support, for the somatic support and emotional support for themselves while they're on these medications, is, and it's kind of very sudden, because as soon as they start taking the medications, all of a sudden the food noise is gone and the body noise is gone,
yeah,
and now they're left with, because I work with people who use food to regulate,
mhm,
oh my god, I can no longer use my thing.
yeah,
Similar to how low dose naltrexone used in the high dose
mhm,
would not allow people to use drugs who might be addicted to
yeah,
heroin or opioids. And so in reading, what that medicine does for them, I'm wondering if there's like a similar kind of jarring experience where people need support
yeah,
for what to do with the emotions that they were managing with food before. Do you find that people come to you with that as well?
for sure, because I am so grateful that I had the Peace with Food program because I keep imagining what would it be like to all of a sudden, you know, not have the food noise, which is lovely, but to not have the food noise and to not have the desire to eat. Like when I was on the first medication, which is Ozempic, like the literal thought of eating would make me nauseous. I'm now on a different medication, which does not do that to me, and I feel much better on. But like, in our curriculum, there was like this sort of, there was this food was still available, and to our system as we were sort of sorting these things out. And I mean, it's like you start this medication and very quickly, you know, you don't have that. And so that you don't have that food to turn to. Like, and I think that yeah, I definitely see people needing support around that. And just I mean, so much of our culture is centered around food, family gatherings and like somebody cooks for you. I mean, some families like cooking is everything at the holidays and they hand this to you and the person's like, I don't know what to do, or, just
Mm.
um but back to the I mean, yes, there is definitely a almost a panic, I think, like what now? And then sometimes people will continue this sort of binging, I guess, we would call it like, they might still override that and still eat, and then they're like, "Oh, no, not a," like, it's yeah, it definitely shows up for people, like, it definitely shows up.
It reminds me of supporting people post gastric bypass,
Yeah,
where despite dealing with the complications from these very advanced surgeries and all that goes with it, that
mhm,
they would still push the
mhm,
limits of their system when emotional eating was present. And I'm wondering if I can ask for dessert a question,
sure,
which is, as a practitioner, as a somatic practitioner, where do you find, and it's not like this first, this second, this third, because that's not how we work. We're not machines. But
mhm,
where do you find the role is of somatic and embodiment work
mm,
in someone supporting themselves if they do want to explore the inclusion of one of these medicines for their health?
yeah, yeah. Oof, I mean, so many levels, you teach about boundaries in your program, and I think, like, the idea of somatic boundaries and how we feel our edges and how we feel in our body. I mean, one thing you see really commonly is that people most want to lose weight and then they lose weight and they're kind of freaked out, like they don't know how to dress, or they literally there's like a body dysmorphia that can kind of come along, like they don't know how to dress their body or how to feel about being in this different body. And like they look in the mirror and what like there's a disconnect. It sort of reminds me of like if I got a haircut and I went tonight and got a pixie and then came home and just each time looked in the mirror and was like, wait, oh my gosh, like that's me, but I'm still gonna get in the shower and be ready to wash my hair. Like it's I think that the somatic work is like critical because I mean it's about the sort of how you feel in your body, how you feel in your tissues, the boundaries piece. I mean, because like there are so many projections on the GLP community about or about it, like the boundaries of like what's mine, what's not mine, and
Mm.
experiencing that somatically is huge. And
Mm.
just like the orienting to the new body, like not new body, it's not a new body, it's not like a before and after, it's like a
Yeah,
orienting to the evolving body.
right, right,
Is
right.
really something.
And in so many ways, the body is always changing.
Yeah.
Right? And the body is not always intentionally changing. Sometimes it's unintentionally changing.
Hmm.
Whether we look at, growth and puberty and early life, and then, people coming into pregnant bodies and then postnatal bodies, and
Right.
what's it like to go through midlife and move into menopause and everything feels different. All of a sudden your muscles are softer and your fat is harder. I'm like, what is happening? There's hairs in new places, and it's like, okay, the body's always changing. And sometimes I'm I'm the kind of the director of the change, and sometimes I'm not the director of the change. And actually, all the time, I'm not the director all the time. And for parts of my life, I do get to be the director. But what's it like to inhabit all of ourselves in the changes, as opposed to being freaked out and evacuating,
Yeah.
from the body when the changes are happening, intentional or not.
Mhm.
And I I mentioned, when people are considering these medications for health, and that health is many things. It's not just blood markers or weight,
Mhm.
or mental health. That health is also something that each person gets to define for themselves.
Yeah.
And when I work with people who are underweight, we don't deny care for the people that need to restore their weight,
Mm-mm.
but somehow we've really, because of how we've internalized issues around weight, we
Mhm.
might deny that to people who are overweight. And I always hold these two extremes, because working with people who are underweight that need to be weight restored for their health is something that's very accepted.
Yeah.
And I think about these things all day. And I don't take saying health lightly, but I also want to mention to anybody who's listening that you get to define that with yourself, in your own being, with your own care team, for what that means for you. And
Yeah.
we can't equate weight with health.
Right.
And at the same time, we can see how there's a correlation if somebody's underweight,
Mhm.
and we're really trying to support them so that they
Yeah.
can have the bone mass that, they can walk and their bones don't break. And and like, how do we hold that, and where inside each of ourselves makes continues to make peace by keeping the conversation open, instead of
Yeah.
closing it and saying, well, it's like this or it's like that. It's
Mhm.
neither of those things, when we're living on the intersection between societal and political and personal and individual, um and the biochemical,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where,
Yeah.
there's no moral value to food, yet there's a biochemical value to food, and that's
Yeah.
measurable.
Yeah.
And so I just want to leave us with that
Um,
invitation for an open door,
yeah.
um, and for each person perhaps to take from what you have shared, what I have shared, um, and adding the somatic piece to the conversation, what that means to them and how they want to go about it. um, I want to name that I will include your website, and
Okay.
email, for people who might want to reach out to you for a discussion around this.
Sure.
I know that I refer to you if anybody has questions, because that's definitely
Yeah.
not what
I
my
love these conversations. Yeah.
yeah, what my strengths are in. I know this is kind of what your passion is. Um, and it's just really lovely to be able to have these conversations out publicly, for
Yeah.
our students and people who care about somatic work and embodiment and these very complex topics. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
And
so much.
thank you for sharing your own journey too. I think it's so special and tender to know about you, and I appreciate your openness and your tenderness and your care.
Thank you. Thank you for making space for that.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. And we'll speak again. There'll be another one of these.
All right. Great. Thank you.